"Dad, you can't go in there." My son's hands were pressed against the doorway of my own house. For a few seconds I honestly couldn't understand what I was seeing. Ethan, the boy I had carried on my shoulders, taught to ride a bicycle and defended through every bad decision of his childhood, was standing between me and my own living room, and he was looking at me like I was a stranger. "Move," I said quietly. He didn't. Behind him I could hear laughter. My daughter-in-law, Lauren, was inside with her parents. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed loudly. It sounded like a celebration, but nobody had invited me. 10 minutes earlier, I had left work early because I needed a folder from my home office. After 31 years maintaining the city's water systems, I had learned to notice things other people ignored. Leaks, pressure changes, cracks hidden beneath fresh paint. I just never expected to discover that my own family had been quietly rotting from the inside. I had barely put my key into the lock when I heard the voices. The door opened halfway. Ethan suddenly appeared. He shoved his body into the gap. "Dad, you really can't come in right now." I stared at him. "This is my house." His eyes moved away. "I know." "Then move," he swallowed. "Lauren's family is here." That sentence hurt more than it should have. Not because Lauren's parents were there, because my son had decided that they had more right to stand inside my house than I did. I slowly removed my key from the lock. Fine. I walked back to my truck. But once I sat behind the steering wheel, my hands started shaking. Not from anger. Humiliation. I looked through the windshield at the 2-story brick house Carol and I had spent decades building our life in. On paper, it was still mine. But something had changed. My son had just shown me that ownership and belonging weren't always the same thing. And after 31 years working with water pressure systems, I knew something else. When a system starts leaking, you don't scream at the pipes. You trace the leak. You find the source. And you shut the valve. So I didn't confront Ethan. I didn't pound on the door. I didn't demand answers. I drove straight to my oldest friend, Marcus. If you've ever had someone you trusted make you feel like a stranger in your own life, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me. Because what I discovered that night was far worse than a family argument. It was a plan. And my daughter-in-law had been working on it for months. Marcus had been a mechanical engineer before retiring, and he had the kind of eyes that noticed tiny problems before they became disasters. I sat across from him and told him everything. The doorway, Ethan's expression, the laughter inside my house. Marcus listened without interrupting. Then he asked one question. Were there warning signs? I looked down at my coffee. Yes, there had been plenty. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Lauren always seemed to know things she shouldn't have known. How Carol liked her coffee, when I usually came home, which nights I worked late, where we kept important documents. At the time, I had thought she was simply attentive. Now it felt different, like she had been studying us. Marcus leaned back. What changed recently? I thought about Ethan asking for money 3 months earlier. A lot of money. He claimed his restaurant, the Copper Table, was struggling temporarily. I had refused, not because I didn't love my son, because that money belonged to Carol's retirement. Ethan had stormed out. You'd rather protect money than help your own son? Those words had stayed with me. Now they sounded different. That night, instead of going home, I parked across the street. The lights in my living room were still on. Lauren's parents were inside. Then I saw something on the dining table. A blue document. Legal paper. My stomach tightened. A week earlier, I'd received an email from First Valley Bank about changes to our family trust account. I dismissed it as a mistake. Now I couldn't. When the house finally went dark, I waited another 20 minutes. Then I entered through the back door. My office smelled like the expensive dinner they'd been eating. I opened my computer, searched the bank email, and froze. A new co-owner had been added to Carol's and my joint savings account. Lauren Mitchell. Reason? Power of attorney. I stared at the screen. I had never signed a power of attorney. Never. I searched through our trust documents. There was a clause allowing an emergency co-trustee under specific circumstances. But there was one problem. I had never appointed Lauren. Someone had done it without my permission. I sat back slowly. Then I remembered the security camera. Years earlier, Carol and I had installed one on a bookshelf because we traveled frequently. Ethan didn't know it existed. I opened the footage. 3 days earlier, at exactly 10:00 a.m., the front door opened. Lauren walked inside with a man in a gray suit. He carried a briefcase. They sat at my dining table. Lauren pulled out documents. She pointed at different sections. The man listened. Then Lauren signed. A notary seal appeared. I watched the footage twice, then 3 times. My stomach turned cold. Suddenly, Ethan's questions about our trust made sense. The missing bank letters made sense. His sudden interest in what would happen to our property if something happened to Carol and me made sense. Then, I remembered something I'd overheard 2 months earlier. Lauren had been on the balcony talking quietly. She thought I was asleep. "The 6-month plan is right on schedule," she'd whispered. "Once the paperwork is done, they won't have any legal standing." I had assumed she was discussing work. She wasn't. She had been talking about us. That was the moment I stopped being a confused father. I became an investigator. The next morning I walked into First Valley Bank at 8:30. I asked to speak with the account manager. Her name was Denise. I didn't sit down. "I need the original power of attorney document." She looked at me carefully, then disappeared into a back office. When she returned, she placed the document on the desk. I stared at it. My name was written across the signature line. At first glance it looked like mine, almost perfect. But there was one problem. The letter D. My D always curved slightly to the left at the bottom. It was a habit I'd developed decades ago. This D curved the opposite direction. Too smooth. Too deliberate. Someone had studied my signature. Someone had practiced it. I ran my finger over the ink. "This is a forgery." Denise's face changed. She immediately contacted the bank's security department. I photographed the document before leaving. Then I called someone Marcus had recommended years ago. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She specialized in financial fraud and asset theft. I showed her the document. She didn't react immediately. She examined the signature, then the notary seal. Then she typed a name into a state database. Her fingers stopped. "That's a problem." "What?" "The notary." She turned the screen toward me. The notary's name was Daniel Ross. He had died 6 months earlier. His license had already been revoked. The seal used on my document should never have existed anymore. I felt something cold move through my chest. Lauren hadn't simply forged my signature. She had used a dead man's notary seal to make the forgery appear legitimate. Evelyn leaned back. "This isn't a family dispute anymore. What is it? Fraud. Identity theft. Potential financial conspiracy." I looked at her. "What do we do?" She slid a document across the desk. "We build a case." I signed my real signature. The D curled left exactly as it always had. Then Evelyn began moving. Subpoenas, bank records, trust documents, surveillance footage. Every account connected to the forged power of attorney was frozen. But she gave me one instruction. "Go home." I frowned. "Go home? And act like you know nothing." That was harder than anything I'd ever done. For 6 weeks, I lived a double life. I went to work. I ate dinner with Carol. I watched television. And Lauren kept visiting. She smiled. She brought coffee. She asked about our health. Every time she walked through my front door, I saw that forged signature in my mind. One evening, I finally told Carol everything. The bank account. The forged signature. The dead notary. She stood at the kitchen sink holding Lauren's coffee cup. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she quietly replied, "She remembered exactly how you take your coffee." I looked at her. "Carol placed the cup down. And she studied your handwriting well enough to forge your name." Her voice was calm. Too calm. I almost have to admire the effort. I knew what she meant. The woman we had welcomed into our family had spent months studying us. Not because she loved us. Because she wanted what we had. From that moment on, Lauren wasn't family to us anymore. She was an intruder. And we were finally ready to remove her. Evelyn's investigation uncovered something even worse. Lauren wasn't simply desperate for money. She had a reason to be desperate. Ethan's restaurant was collapsing. The copper table was losing roughly $11,000 every month. Unpaid invoices, overdue loans, supplier complaints. The business was weeks away from bankruptcy. Ethan had asked me for money because he was drowning. I had said no. Lauren had decided that our savings would become their lifeboat, and she didn't intend to ask permission. She intended to take it. Her law firm began its own investigation after receiving Evelyn's subpoenas. That uncovered another layer. Lauren had been using company resources for personal schemes, legal forms, client information, old notary materials. She had apparently convinced herself that because she worked around the law, She could manipulate it. That arrogance became her weakness. Meanwhile, our trust account was frozen under court order. Lauren had no idea. Neither did Ethan. They were waiting for money that would never arrive. Every night I checked the security footage. Lauren would open the mailbox, make phone calls, check her phone, then pace around the house. She was becoming nervous. The trap was closing. But we needed one final piece. A moment when Lauren would reveal exactly what she believed she was about to receive. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Evelyn called. "Everything is ready." I closed my eyes. "Are you sure?" "Every order is signed. Every account is secured. Every piece of evidence is preserved." I exhaled. 6 weeks of pretending. 6 weeks of smiling at someone who had tried to steal our future. It was almost over. That same evening, Lauren called Carol. She invited herself and her parents to breakfast the next morning. Apparently, she had a big surprise. I almost laughed. She had no idea that the real surprise had already arrived. Saturday morning was gray. The house was silent. Carol and I sat at the dining table. No food, no coffee, just a thick case file between us. At 9:15, the door opened. Lauren walked in smiling. Her parents followed. Ethan came behind them. Everyone was laughing. Until Lauren saw us. Her smile disappeared. She looked at the table, then at Carol, then at me. "Where's breakfast?" I didn't answer. Ethan stepped forward. "Dad, I told you yesterday. Amanda's family needs to talk to Mom and me privately." I looked at him. "No," he frowned. "Dad, this is my house." The room went silent. I placed my hand on the case file. "And today, everyone is going to listen." Lauren's expression changed. For the first time I saw fear. Ethan tried to regain control. "Dad, you're making this weird." "No." I opened the file. "You made it weird 6 weeks ago when you blocked me from entering my own home." Lauren folded her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." I slid the first document across the table, the forged power of attorney. Her eyes dropped to it. For half a second she didn't breathe. Then she smiled. "That isn't mine." I placed the second document beside it. The bank freeze order. Then the third. The death record of the notary, whose seal appeared on the document. Lauren's smile disappeared. Her mother picked up the death record. "Daniel Ross died?" I nodded. 6 months ago. Her father looked at Lauren. "What is this?" She didn't answer. Ethan stared at the signature. Then, he looked at me. "That isn't your signature." I pointed to the D. "No, mine curves left." His face became pale. Lauren suddenly stood. "Dad, I was trying to help. By forging my name? You weren't using the money. It's our retirement. You have plenty." Carol finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. "That's not the point." Lauren turned toward her. "Your son needed help." Carol looked directly at her. "You weren't helping him." Lauren's face hardened. "You're both getting old. What were you going to do with all that money anyway?" I felt something inside me go completely still. There it was. The truth. Not love. Not family. Greed. "You thought our age made us helpless," I said. Lauren scoffed. "Ryan is your only son." "Ethan." She stared at me. "What?" "My son's name is Ethan." She had become so comfortable with her plan that even her lies were beginning to unravel. She shook her head. "The money was going to him eventually." I nodded slowly. "So you decided to speed things up?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "You weren't going to give him anything. I was protecting his future." Ethan stared at her. "Lauren," she turned toward him. "What? You told me everything was legal. I thought I could fix it. You forged his signature?" "I had to." The room became silent. I reached into my pocket. My phone was already recording. But I didn't need another confession. The evidence was overwhelming. I stood. "You wanted a payday." Lauren glared at me. "You think you're better than me?" "No." I looked at her. "I just know the difference between family and theft." Then I made the call. "Police?" "The evidence is ready." Lauren's face changed instantly. "No." She lunged toward the file. Ethan grabbed her arm. "Lauren, stop." She fought against him. Then screamed. "You think I did this alone?" Ethan froze. "You gave me the trust documents." Silence. "You gave me the mailbox key." Ethan's face drained of color. "And you signed the restaurant loss reports yourself." Nobody moved. Ethan slowly looked at me. I didn't say a word. Because I already had my answer. Sirens approached from the street. Lauren's parents stood frozen beside the table. Ethan looked like someone had pulled the floor from beneath him. Then 3 officers entered through the front door with a warrant. Lauren started crying, then screaming. She blamed everyone. The bank, the notary, the paperwork. Ethan, me, but every explanation collapsed under the evidence. The officer read the charges. Lauren's wrists were placed in handcuffs. As she was led toward the door, she looked back at Ethan. "You're just going to let them do this to me?" Ethan didn't answer. She screamed again. "You needed that money." He looked down. "I didn't know about the forgery." Lauren laughed bitterly. "You knew enough." Then, she was gone. Her parents followed behind her, humiliated. The neighbors had gathered outside. But I barely noticed them. Inside the house there were only 3 people left. Carol, Ethan, me. Ethan dropped into a chair. Then he started crying. "Dad." I said nothing. I was desperate. Carol walked into the kitchen. He looked at me. She told me it was just a temporary loan. I stared at him. "You gave her the trust documents. I didn't know she was going to forge your signature. You gave her the mailbox key." He covered his face. I was stupid. "No," I shook my head. "You were selfish." He looked up. That word hurt him. Good, sometimes the truth hurts because it reaches a place excuses can't. Ethan lost his restaurant. The copper table went bankrupt. Lauren lost her career. Her legal certification was revoked. She faced criminal charges and financial restitution. The money she had tried to steal was recovered and protected. But the most important thing she lost wasn't money. It was trust. Ethan wasn't charged with the forgery because the evidence didn't prove that he personally created or signed the fraudulent document. But that didn't mean he walked away untouched. His marriage was gone. His business was gone. And the trust between him and his parents was shattered. A few days later, Marcus came to my house carrying a new lock. I looked at the old one. The same lock that had once represented safety. Now it represented a lesson. I unscrewed it myself. Dust fell onto the porch. I installed the new lock. Then I turned the key. Click, the sound was strangely satisfying. My house was secure again, but security wasn't the same as peace. Ethan stood on the lawn. He didn't dare step onto the porch. I walked outside carrying a bag. His clothes. The last of his belongings. I handed it to him. He looked at me through tears. "Dad," I interrupted him. "You're my son." He nodded. "I can forgive you as your father." His face tightened. "But I can't trust you as the owner of this house." He looked down. "Trust isn't given anymore." I stepped back. "It's rebuilt." He nodded. Then he walked toward the gate. And for the first time since that terrible night, I closed my front door without feeling like someone was waiting on the other side to take something from me. That evening, Marcus sat beside me on the porch. He handed me a glass of cold water. Neither of us spoke. The sun slowly disappeared behind the houses. For 6 weeks, I had lived with tension pressing against my chest. Every smile had felt fake. Every knock at the door had made me suspicious. Every time Lauren said family, I wondered what she really meant. Now it was quiet. And for the first time, the quiet felt like mine. People sometimes think revenge means destroying the person who hurt you. It doesn't. Sometimes revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's greed destroy everything you've spent your life protecting. Lauren wanted our money. She wanted control. She wanted to turn our trust into her opportunity. Instead, she exposed herself. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to threaten her. I didn't need to become cruel. I simply followed the evidence. I let the truth do what anger never could. It destroyed the lie. And there was one final lesson I learned. Love can make you blind. Family can make you forgiving. But neither one should make you careless. If someone starts asking strange questions about your finances, if important mail suddenly disappears, if someone becomes unusually interested in your property, your accounts, or what happens after you're gone, pay attention. You don't have to accuse anyone. You don't have to panic. Just verify. Protect yourself. Because sometimes the person standing closest to you isn't protecting you. They're studying you. And by the time you realize why, they may already have a plan. As for Ethan, I still love my son. That never changed. But love doesn't erase consequences. He has to rebuild what he broke. One day, maybe he'll earn his way back into my home. maybe he won't. That's his choice. And mine is simple. My home is no longer a place where people manipulate love to gain access. It's my home. It's Carol's home. And after everything that happened, that little metal click of the new lock became one of the most comforting sounds I'd ever heard. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven Ethan after discovering what he did, or would you have changed the locks immediately? And if you've ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted, you're not alone. Subscribe to Dad's Cold Revenge for more emotional revenge stories where justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with evidence, with patience, and with one final click of the lock. Until next time, protect your family, protect your future, and never let love convince you to ignore the warning signs.